Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight, we're going to be talking about our ancestral tree. Where have our ancestors come, walked through on this earth? Where have they guided their wings, so to speak? Where have they traversed? What have they gone through? What have they experienced? And how did their human form take them on a journey across continents, through wars, through devastation, and still come out and say, it's another day. I have another day to breathe, another day to be able to be here and to make the world a better place. What we'll be talking about today is, what are the journeys of our ancestors? How do they influence our lives? How do they share their stories? How do many secrets still seem to be trapped behind steel doors? And what do we need to know? What do we need to figure out? Do we really need the information? And can we form, almost like we call it, ancestral lineage healing? Can we form that paradigm? Can we see how important we are in this life if we've been given the service to be able to walk through? Today, my guest is Caroline Topperman. Her book is Your Roots Cast a Shadow, One Family Search Across History for Belonging. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here today.
Glad to talk to you about this topic, Caroline, because you right off it caught me up. I really love the topic. I love the title, and something in here drew me in, and I'm sure it was the word Poland. I was sure it was the word Russia, and maybe our ancestors, because of my own ancestral lineage that I had worked to heal over the decades. My ancestors have come from Poland, from Lithuania, and from Irish, so I truly find I've been on that journey. So don't you think that your book is an absolute walk through history and time?
So that was the whole point of writing this book. That was one of my major reasons for writing it, because I think what happens is that there are a lot of us who are from that region of the world. I'm hoping that it also strikes something in people who aren't. But there are a lot of people, and I find that especially those of us who have our roots in, I'll say, Eastern Europe, in the Baltics, in that region, we really have a lot of it's been lost. A lot of it are things we need to reconnect with, and I think that it's just very important. I was hoping that it would connect with a lot of people on different levels that way.
I think it's really important because I'm almost 70 now, and I grew up in the Northeast where everybody came from someplace else, you know. I lived up in Scranton, and everybody seems to have, you know, you go down the corner and they were the Italians over here, the Polish lived over here, the Lithuanians over here, the Germans over here, and, you know, we were all together, and we kind of just really had everybody's traditions and everybody's stories. But also true, we also had everybody's angst, wherever their ancestors have come from. Their pain, their anger, their violence, their stories, the ways in which they lived, were also, too, the troubles that they have escaped and they've never been able to process or feel through or anything. They kind of brought their broken hearts and their broken bodies with them when they crossed over in the early 1900s. Don't you think that's very important to reflect upon in many of our generations going forward?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason people make such drastic moves.
Right.
You know, sometimes it's for work, sure. Sometimes, like me, it was more fun. It was more of an interesting move for me. But usually, you're leaving something behind on purpose. And there's another layer too, especially depending on who came when, but people might be leaving wars. They might be leaving famine. They might be leaving political unrest. And so, that absolutely creates scars. It's painful. And then you have those people who want to remember and talk about it, and those people who absolutely don't, and they just want to put it behind them.
Yeah. I think we look back at the early 1900s when I grew up, my ancestors, it was post-war. Money was very hard to come by. Mental health was rampant because there was no help or support, because everybody was going through some kind of chaos within their life of trying to survive or make it to the next day. And then we look back at those who were born in the 60s and 70s, and they say, oh, well, we went through this and we went through that, and wasn't it awful? And, they get rid of their parents or their grandparents and they don't talk to them anymore kind of idea. It's almost as if the lineages have been trying to break themselves. In other words, we don't want to know, we don't want to connect, we don't want to hear anything about it because they did this, that, or that to us. Don't you think that there's been a lot of that repeat kind of story over the decades?
I do. So now I'm really thinking about it in that way. I think that, absolutely. I know that I know my grandparents really wanted to leave everything behind in a way, my grandmother especially. I know my mother was trying to reconnect back, as am I. But it's definitely fragmented and broken. Even as recently as just the mid last century, my father was he was just completely ousted from the family, and so that broke that lineage, and then it was sort of up to him and me to reconnect with that. So absolutely, a lot of broken lineages and forgotten lineages too.
Yeah, there's a lot of times, people will say, I really can't find my lineage. I know for myself, the name has been changed. It's been written differently. Different people in the family, even within the family, would put different letters on the word, and we couldn't even look it up going backwards. It's almost as if they wanted to be lost. They wanted to hide. They wanted to shelter themselves, but also too, they wanted to find safety and security, and they would do anything to be able to find it. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's well known, too, that people coming to the United States, for example, in the early 1900s, would change their last names because it sounded too, whatever, fill in the blank. So it sounded too foreign or too ethnic or too, And so, even in my family, for example, my last name, Topperman, was made up. It was made up after I was born. My last name had one P earlier, and sometimes a double N, depending on who it was. And so we had it changed when we moved, when my parents readopted the name. But even my name has been changed from my parents as well. So it's because I was born with a completely Polish last name. So absolutely, it's interesting. And my grandmother changed her name in Poland to make it sound less Jewish, and my grandfather as well. So even my immediate cousins, for example, who we should have the same last name, we don't because of that.
But also, too, you think back at the time of immigration in the early 1900s, one person in the family may immigrate and the others may not. Or they may start a new family down the corner, down the street, maybe in another country. Or you think about it, people wanted to lose their children. They felt like they wanted to let them go. In other words, there weren't orphanages that you could help, get assistance. They would kind of maybe have a child out of wedlock or whatever, and they would be just left. I think there's a lot of that happened in the early, I would say, the first 50 years of the 1900s. Because I can distinctly remember, a lot of times they would be like, oh, well, so-and-so relative, oh, we don't talk about them anymore. And I would say, where did all these things come in this family tree? And they're like, well, I don't know. They must have made a mistake at Ancestry.com, So in other words, there's a lot of secrets. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of people that have been found, lost, and are still hidden. But do we need to unroot them? Do we need to be able to expose their secrets, or do we need to connect with them? What are your thoughts on that?
I would say we don't need to unearth their secrets, or if we do not need to make them public necessarily. I think there's a certain element that where we need to respect the dead. We need to respect the secrets that they took with them, even if we find out that those aren't necessarily our secrets to tell. But I do think it's important to connect with them and with our roots. And especially because as the world becomes smaller, as we have, we travel, we move, people don't just live in one home forever anymore.
Right.
I think in my lifetime I've already moved probably 20 times or more. So I think that it's important, because I think it's also important to have our roots to be firmly planted, because that also creates the bridges to make us understand each other. So, you mentioned that you have roots in Poland and Russia, in Lithuania. So these are all places I know, Russia less, but these are places I know. My grandmother, one of my grandmothers was born in Kiev. My other grandparents were from Lviv, which is Ukraine, but that was under Russian rule for a long time, so borders changed. And I think it makes us understand each other better. And this way, even before we spoke a single word to each other, we had a connection. Yeah. And so by knowing where we come from, by understanding that, it makes it easier for all of us to talk to each other, which I think is being lost.
I think what it does is it brings about the energy of our soul pattern, so to speak. When you talk about, on the front of the page, it says, your roots cast a shadow and there's a tree there. And I think about it all the time. I say, the roots in the earth are like ashes of eons gone by. So if we think about the ashes of eons gone by, and you put your feet upon the land in which you've come from, you can kind of feel the sense of warmth, or the sense of belonging, sense of familiarity, or the sense of, you could just almost like exhale, so to speak. Don't you think, perhaps?
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And I know that even though my family left, when I landed in Poland and I started walking down the streets, I felt connected. I immediately felt connected to the places that I was walking on, the cobblestones, knowing that these were some of the roads that my family once walked on. And more, so I live in Canada, but more so than here, because my ancestors are not from here. Yeah, no, I felt very connected because I'm a first-generation immigrant to Canada. And I've always felt somewhat displaced because of that. And when I was able to go back and be there, it's hard to explain, but it's something I could feel in my bones.
Oh, I totally get it, because I live in New Orleans, and let me tell you, I've been here for decades, and when I go and I travel, it's like, I can't wait to get back home, And as soon as I feel the humidity, as soon as I touch my feet to the ground, it's where I belong. It is the place. And it's like I can't imagine living anywhere else, right?
Yeah, no, I understand that very well. Definitely.
Yeah. I think also, too, the idea is that I thought about this at one time. You know how they say they bring plants over from their homeland and they want to be able to recreate their homeland in a new place, right? But we think about that, we say, are we bringing the nature or the energy of life with us? because they needed to feel security when they moved to their new land. Don't you think that they kind of had I almost liken it to, they really did know that they were connected to something more other than their human story. Do you know what I mean? In other words, they knew their experiences and stuff they went on, but they brought a piece of their land with them. They knew that they had a sense of connection. In other words, home traveled with them versus home sometimes always being whatever the hardship was. Perhaps? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking about this now. I think it is. We innately want to feel comfortable and sort of enveloped in security, I would say. That to me is home. And if you feel displaced, then you don't feel that way, and it's very hard to move forward to build a new life.
Right.
So I think it's that idea of being able to bring a little bit of that security with you when you go. I think that's why you mentioned earlier that you have, where you used to live, that you had these areas and you knew that you had the Polish community here and the Irish community there. And it's the same thing. Toronto's like that as well, where you walk through different neighborhoods and sometimes you feel like you're entering a completely different country because even the signs are in whatever language, which is amazing. But I think that's what happens is you need to bring some familiarity with you. And I know when I moved to Poland, I had some problems integrating, even though technically it's my roots are there, but it wasn't my culture, really, if that makes sense. And so for me, it was really about finding my comfort in food that didn't taste so different. And it's silly because it really wasn't that different, but there were slight differences to the food. So I had to go and find food that I knew, that made me feel comfortable. So I think that's what it is. It's taking a little bit of that security so you don't feel completely displaced.
I think it's about being able to say that you take the security with you, but you have to learn how to nurture that security. So food is a nurturing thing. You know, I can honestly remember, my grandmother always made kielbasa. Nobody made it like her. No one ever kept the recipe, of course. And everybody always complained, she put too much garlic in it, blah, 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 blah. But, now we look back on it and we're like, we wish we had that. But we didn't keep that connection, And I'm the only one who makes the potato stuffing at Thanksgiving. And I'm the only one that makes it what I call the right way, of course. But everybody else, makes their own version of it, but their own version of it doesn't have the essence of the way that my grandmother had made it. And I distinctly remember, and it's so funny, every single Thanksgiving never fails. Something always happens with it. It either burns part of it, or you forget to put in an ingredient, or it overflows in the oven and catches on fire. I mean, this is like a joke in the family. Is that, okay, y'all, oh gosh, y'all made the stuffing this year? What happened to it? You always ask what happened to it, because it's almost as if your ancestors are there in the room with you and they're laughing. Do you know what I mean? They're kind of like putting their own spin on it, so to speak. And we have always said that. Oh goodness, are you making the stuffing again? And it's just a way of being able to say, I hear you, I see you, I validate you, I know that you've been there for me and that you're still here. And I always think of Thanksgiving as a way to give thanks to our ancestors. So that's why I always make that stuffing. So for me, that's my pattern. That's my mantra once a year that I do. I think when you say about when you traveled back to Poland, you needed to find those places that you could feel that connection, but you also had to honor yourself at the same time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, of course, I started building roots in Canada. So I straddled both of them. But it was that feeling that I needed to also reconnect to those original roots
right,
in order to be able to move forward to set new roots in places. And so that it's that, and food is just one of the pieces, I think. For me, it was also some language that we had to, like, just to get back to that language, to understand that, to understand my parents. I grew up in a home where English was a second language, for example. So it was all of that. It was just to make these connections with them, to then be able to take all of that to be able to move forward. But it gives you that sense of security. So like you're saying at Thanksgiving, where you have that sense of remembering the past, and it's a hug from the past. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the feeling that I get.
It also, too, is vitally important. I know that food, you say that it is just one piece of it, but we think back on food. Most of our ancestors fled for starvation. I know that was very popular in the early 1900s. The Irish, they left because there was no food. Or people would move and immigrate and migrate across Europe just for that reason, for food. So food is so vitally important. It has some sort of a deep connection within our being that we don't even realize how vitally. It's almost like this. You know when you're going to maybe make a quilt, you have all the pieces and you put them all together and everything, but if you didn't have the thread, you were going nowhere. So almost you think of food as the thread, so to speak, how food has really provided a sense of our identity, just like you said, koshi was my stuffing, nobody knows what it means. You find another Polish person, they don't know what it means, but it was my thread. So you think about all of the things in our life and our experience, how they've woven the tapestry of who we are today. Because we might heal our ancestral lineage and we think, oh, okay, all that's over. We close our doors. No longer will our families be having strife and pain and all this other stuff. But they're still part of our quilt. They're still part of the web, so to speak, so they are vitally important. Your journey of finding out all these important pieces along the web kind of turns on the lights on the web and says, look at how glorious this is. Isn't that your purpose?
Oh, absolutely. And it makes me more whole as well. So I can't be whole. I can't be fully myself until I get to know these people who were a part of me.
Right, because without them, we wouldn't be here, right?
Yeah. So, so I think that's the. Yeah, sorry, I'm not, now I'm a little bit lost in thought, which doesn't work so well for a show where we're talking, but
no, it's absolutely
really
awesome.
Thinking about it.
It's awesome for this show. How about that?
Okay, great. But no, I think so, because the thing too is that there were, especially with my family, and there are so many questions, so many lost memories and forgotten memories and unspoken memories, and so many parts of my family that I don't know, and that I have to now come to terms with the fact that there's a good chance I will never know. And and so you walk forward with these holes, but and I think I know quite a lot. I've worked with genealogists. I went to Poland. I did a lot of my own research as well. There's fairly robust online search engines for these kinds of things. But yeah, it's really interesting that now I need to come to terms with those holes and accept them, and then take what I know to be able to move forward. And I mean, I know that there will always be holes, but it's okay as well. Yeah. It's okay that I don't necessarily know everything.
It's so interesting, Caroline, as you're speaking. I see you sitting And you have your hands on your elbows on your knees, and there's a bunch of ribbons in front of you, and you're just braiding them.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was a really big part of that, and actually, that's a nice metaphor for how it was when I was collecting all these stories too, because I really did had a big, very large piece of paper, and I literally was braiding timelines of people's stories to be able to follow in their, virtually, I guess, or in their footsteps, to be able to understand them. I sat with maps, which are also lines. So, yeah, that's a very beautiful image. Thank you.
Well, you know what? I really think of it too, Caroline. I think really what you're seeking, and I think what many people seek when they go on this journey into our background, where we came from, in other words, where all of our DNA, our genetics, and the breadth of life that we have today has come from, is what we want to know. Here's what we want to know. Were they loved? Were they cared for? And were they just able to take a breath? And did someone give them a hug? That's all we want to know. Truly, if you look back at all of the journeys of all your ancestors, through Nazi time, through Holocaust time, through Polish and Russia and all of those countries, and all the crisis and the chaos in the early 1900s, I mean, I want to know that. I want to know that my parents or my grandparents or my great-grandparents had that. And I want to be able to touch that story at that moment in time and know that I'm touching and feeling their heart. Instead of touching and feeling their pain on the journey, I want to touch and feel their heart, that they know they are loved, because then in turn, they would also love me back. Perhaps?
That's beautiful. I love that. Yes. Yes. I agree. Yes, that they had good lives, that there was good surrounding them. Absolutely. I can't even add to that. That's beautiful.
I think it's so vitally important, because if we look back at many decades, there was a lot of mental health where people were, quote, lost. And I really look at them, they weren't lost. They were trying to branch out of the norm, and they were trying to experience, they were trying to explore, they were trying to say something different, and they kept getting pushed back, the pushback. That we think of that as war also. People were trying to say, I don't want this anymore. I want something different, and there was pushback. So people were constantly being held down, so to speak, and we want to know, were they able to evolve and to breathe forward? And I would say that you're a testament to that, and so am I. That yes, they were, because we are still hold within us the energy of their soul. So if we hold it within us, the energy of their soul, devoid of their story, but we still hold their essence, which is what we're seeking anyway, then yes, they have evolved. Yes, they have healed. And yes, they are still becoming the activists. And now, look at it. We can speak up. We can talk to other people. We can travel. We can have things. We can lose things. We could have a crisis. We can turn around and we can heal. And aren't we a testament to the real, I don't like the word resilience. We are true to our soul that is eternal. So we are the testament by having this story, yes?
And yes, and I would say strength. Because they did. They stood upon the earth too. They had their own resolve. They had their things. And this actually makes me think of one thing, if it's okay if I say it, I remember there was this one moment when I was in Poland, and I was at a protest, and the government had just taken over the national TV stations, and they wanted to change the broadcasting. And I remember standing at this protest, and I remember thinking and having this really strange connection to my grandfather, who I knew, but I could feel him standing there, and I was like, I wonder if he would have been proud of me, if he would have been also at this protest with me, if he would have been saying the same things. And so it was like I had that connection, and I was able to bring it forward. And I've had that several times in different different places where I maybe hear a piece of music, or I would read something, or I would do something, and I could channeling these people, and that's that connection that was so vital for me to make. Try to understand them and understand their motivations and understand their decisions of what they did.
Right, because they were saying that they were with you. I mean, that's when we highlight that part of our energy within us is part of them. And it's so vitally important to be able to have that connection. You know, I know for myself, I can walk down the streets of New Orleans and all of a sudden I'll have this vision and it plays out like a movie screen in front of my consciousness. And I'm going, oh, I was here before. It was 1857. I was in the jewelry store. I was running down the street. And then all of a sudden I turn around, I hear a clip-clop behind me, but there's no one on the street. And it was the horse coming behind me trying to catch me. And I have all these visions all the time. And we built a house on the other side of the river. I was going up the street, and I saw myself with a parasol walking on the levee. So I get all of these visions, and all these visions are also connections of our own self in many lifetimes before. So while you are journeying and going back to all of these times when your ancestors had been there, perhaps, too, your soul may have been in many past lives in these areas, and you get a deeper connection to explore. So I think sometimes, you know, just as we shared before about those doors that don't need to be opened, sometimes those are stories where we might have been there. We need to go back there again, you know. So there's a lot of mishmash about our ancestral lineages and our soul lineages and the stories in which we've all been. Have you had any of those senses when you traveled?
Oh, absolutely. I traveled. I also had a couple of that with my mother. My mom. My mother studied painting in Paris for a while, and she lived there with my dad. And years after she had passed away, when I went to Paris, and my dad was urging me to go see where they had lived when they were young, and it was just walking through these neighborhoods, getting that feeling from them.
Right.
So yes, yeah, absolutely. And then again, of course, in Poland, where we really tried to immerse ourselves into society. I mean, I lived there for 4.5 years. But just that idea of when I found out that my family, we randomly chose an apartment because I liked the outside of the building, only to find out that my family lived there at the end, after the war. And I didn't know. No one told me. And it was just these places I was drawn to.
I think it's our soul will always want to come home to be able to reclaim parts of pain or to heal others. You know, sometimes I've always shared with people, I said, when you go back to those places, bring a bag of seeds with you, you know, random seeds, and just cast them about as you walk. Because then you're seeding a new generation. In other words, you're giving them life to be able to be released. You know, there's a lot of times when spirits, you know, I live in New Orleans again, I show this all the time, you could feel the spirits, you know, when you walk down the streets. But if you turn around and you spread seeds, what you're doing is you're actually allowing them to say they can leave. They're not trapped anymore. So it gives the soul spirit kind of like to say, oh, I can fly free again. I think sometimes when we have these stories, we kind of relish in them. We hold on to them. We kind of live with them for a while. But then we, too, will release their story because they really need to be free. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's what, by revisiting and seeing and connecting, I think we are allowing that to happen. When I finished writing my book, my editor looked at me and said, okay, you've done what you've given that nod to your family, and now you can let them go.
Right.
Yeah. So she really, she had that same, she's the one who been saying similar things of that, and she always laughs that now my family has taken up a permanent spot inside her brain too, and she feels so connected to them because of all the work she's done. But no, right. Absolutely, that's what it was like. I honored them, and I gave them the voice.
Right.
And now it's time to let them go.
Set them free. Set their spirit free.
Yeah, set them free. Okay. Exactly.
Yeah. I see this a lot. Here, they're doing a lot of construction and stuff. And after Hurricane Katrina, when I was here, oh, good grief. Yeah. I was going down the highway, and it was like all I could feel was this gray, intense fog and mist around me. And all I could smell was this intense sense of death and ashes. And I had known that what was happening was that all of the eons of spirits that had been trapped here were tilled. In other words, the ground flooded, so they were tilled, so to speak. The ground was tilled, like, you run a grass tiller, And when I think about that all the time is we try to honor and to love and to respect, but also to live forward. So when you do a lot of this work and reconstruction and finding a lot of information about your lineage, it's really about living forward and being able to create a new path to kind of guide the people along with you. Because I think sometimes people get stuck. I had one person, they had written a book and they took on the lineage that, of one of their ancestors, and they could not shake it. And they passed away in exactly the manner and the method in which that person was, because they took on the energy of it. So I think it is truly, as we say, when you do the work, bring it, honor it, feel it, love it, care for it, and then release it, is our greatest gift. That's what ancestral, healing is all about. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I can't even say it better myself, because that's exactly it. I love that. That's beautiful.
Awesome. Well, you'll have to get yourself some seeds and start tossing them around, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I always say when people start getting on this work, when you step into your mission or your service, so to speak, in other words, what you were meant to do is you dump a bunch of seeds in a big bowl and you cast them out, and then you're supposed to watch in wonderment what grows. You're not standing there saying, oh, I threw out tomato seeds, and where's my tomato plant, and oh, it needs sun, and oh, I have to water, the whole story. In other words, you're supposed to give out unconditional love, and that's what that is about. By giving back to your ancestors, you're giving them unconditional love by allowing them to fly free. So once you do that and you cast out these, you don't even know what's going to come up, but all you know that it's going to be glorious. Isn't that what we wanted by finding out their stories, is to know that everything's okay?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because there are so many questions, because there are so many unknowns. It's that two-pronged approach, I guess. Is that it grounds you, it connects you, but it's also freeing. It also lets you go.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, Caroline, in closing, I wanted to touch on this one topic. A lot of times people take on, a race, a religion, a disease, an experience, and they make it their own, and they carry it around as a badge, and that we really don't see through to their heart and their soul. I think that really what we're talking about is once you do this type of work, you really see yourself in another light, and you say, wow, my ancestors have experienced and traveled and lived in different places. And this collection of memories is their ethnic or their race or their religion or whatever. But it is not who they are. There's so much more than that. Isn't that what we wanted to find out, is who were they deep in their heart?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, because that was something that was given to them. And, I know that those are things maybe they questioned too. So of course it wasn't just about those specific things. They were people who had to navigate their own changes and their own feelings about their cultures or religions or anything like that. And I think because all those things change, we really connect with their souls and who they were as people, and not necessarily what was thrust upon them.
Yes, I think in the year 2025, there's a lot of tilling of the soil going on. And many people are so resistant. They're saying that that's part of their identity and don't dare disturb them or don't disturb their sense of security. However, we can't have unconditional love. We can't learn how to fly. We can't learn how to be able to say, how can we go forward if we don't let go of the reins, so to speak. So sometimes tilling of the soil is necessary, perhaps?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
It's kind of rough. It's kind of rough when it happens, when I'm thinking back to your the cover of your book, even though the shadows are there, there's all different kinds of critters. There's a whole universe just inside of a size of a quarter underneath a tree. So if you think about that whole other universe underneath there, you go, oh, isn't that awesome? You could see how grand the whole world is. You know what I mean?
Yes. No, absolutely. Yes.
It's so interesting. Well, Caroline, can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work? That would be wonderful.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I'm very easy to find. I'm Caroline Topperman pretty much everywhere. That's my website as well, and that's where everything is listed. So it's not hard to find me online.
Very good. Well, Caroline, it was such a pleasure to have you with us here today. I think what we've really talked about is about being able to say, where's the story? Find the thread. Create a quilt, feel it, wrap it around you, get your sense of security, and then be able to say it is awesome. That's really about being able to have this sense of we're here for a reason, and that's really what you did. And I think you really did a lot of work on your ancestral healing, yes?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was such a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was very insightful. I have a lot to think about now.
Awesome. If you'd like to find out more information about Caroline Topperman, again, the book is Your Roots Cast a Shadow, One Family Search Across History for Belonging. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to her website for more information. And it is about being able to say, what is in my past? What is in my future? How have I been influenced? Perhaps maybe I didn't create this. Maybe this is a story that's repeating. How can I find myself to be able to step onto the path, create a sense of story, and to be able to find out where I'm from, and maybe say, it is going to be okay, find security, find a place that you're cared for, and that you really can set your feet on the ground, feel loved and honored. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettgallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.